Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, distinguished parliamentarians, colleagues and friends. It's an honor to be here this afternoon. Since 1979, general consensus has prevailed in the developed economies that computer software is a subject predicate to copyright law, and that the primary form of legal control exercised over the making and distribution of computer software is in copyright. Beginning in the early 90s, the United States legal system began also to apply patent law to the development and distribution of software, but the primary legal arrangements for the software industry in the world, both proprietary and free and open source software, depend from copyright. Copyright gives to the authors of computer programs the same exclusive rights it gives to authors of literary works. In my home legal system, those are defined as the rights to make copies, to prepare derivative works, and to control initial distribution. In other legal systems within the European community, it may also include rights of public display, performance, and the making available of software. The point is that the authors of software are given rights to exclusive control over their works, and in the world of free and open source software, legal arrangements are used to return to users some of the exclusive rights possessed by authors. My role right now this afternoon is to discuss the most widely used of these false copyright licenses, the GNU General Public License. It now exists in the world in two versions, version 2 made in 1991 and version 3 made in 2006-2007. Taken together, the two versions of the GPL currently are used to license and distribute software of commercial value in the world in excess of $120 billion a year, roughly in the neighborhood of 100 billion euro. Services and other forms of IT built on top of that FOSS now amount to several hundred additional billion euro a year. The GPL licenses more software than all of Microsoft and Oracle put together. The GPL is roughly an order of magnitude larger than SAP, the largest commercial producer of software in the European Union. But we don't think of the GPL as a company or a block, because of course it isn't. It's actually a system of rights returns to users. Both versions of the GPL are designed to provide users of software with four crucial rights. The right to use the software for any purpose without additional permission or restriction. The right to have and study and understand the source code of the software, so that every person who comes into possession of a computer program can understand how it works, what it does, and how it might be changed or improved to make it more fit for her purposes. And to share both modified and unmodified versions of the program at discretion. In order to ensure that those rights are guaranteed to every user, the GNU GPL versions take a very simple approach to how software should be given to its users. The license says, basically, here is software. You may do anything you want with it. Copy it, modify it, give it to anyone you please. Just don't give them fewer rights in whatever you make than we gave you in what you started with. In other words, we're a commons, and you may build in this commons all you want and do anything you want here, but don't try to remove anything from the commons permanently. This use of copyright law to make sharing impermeable to breakage, to prevent anyone from taking the program private or enhancing the program and not sharing the improvements under distribution, has essentially socialized research and development in infrastructure software around the world. Android, which is based on GPL-licensed operating system code, is now the majority of all mobile computing devices on Earth. The server market, which was 100% dominated by Microsoft at the end of the 20th century, is no longer dominated by Microsoft at all. More than 20% of all the servers shipped in the world last year were shipped with free software on them from the factory. The monopoly, which two of the largest governments on earth spent a decade fighting in their own courts, gave way to competition from FOSS software. The GPL achieved those results because the GPL institutionalized sharing and brought various market participants from IBM to Hewlett-Packard to the United States government to Oracle to the largest manufacturers in East Asia to a common table in which everybody's actions benefited everybody and research could be socialized rather than contained within the silos of individual firms. The result was a burst of enormous innovation in the world, which changed not just prices in the market for information technology, but the structure of the market itself. We were working with GPL version 2 from 1993 when I started working with the license's author, Mr. Stallman, well into the 21st century. In the course of those 16 years, not only we changed the intellectual and substantive role of IT in the world, but of course a lot of other technological development occurred as well. Therefore, in 2006, we began revising the GPL in a public discussion process. By the time we began that public work in 2006, hundreds of large businesses around the world, including 30 of the largest patent holders in information technology, were using, selling, and running their businesses over GPL software. All, I repeat, all of the large investment banks in the world, located in Europe, in Japan, and in the United States, all used free software. Relicensing, that is, revising the license of the GPL, was therefore a large-scale, international legislative activity conducted without government authorization or hierarchy. Anarchist legislation, legislation without government. In the briefing document, I presented for you a summary of that process, pointing at the tools, devices, and principles that we used to conduct a process around the world 16 months long to revise all the rules of sharing software. We built technology the European Parliament has yet to build for itself to allow not just public access to legislative material, but public comment and editing of legislative material. Our STET system for reviewing drafts of the GPL on the net in public, which in the hands of Philippe Aigran became Comment in Paris, a system for public consultation, was an early attempt at the very beginning of the 21st century to conduct public legislation. As the history of that revision process laid out briefly in our document shows, we found approximately 2,000 comments around the world over the course of 16 months, which our system carefully required parties to tie directly to wording in the document. So we had no flame wars, no long speeches, no, if you'll pardon my use of the word, political posturing. People had to say, this sentence doesn't work for me because, and here's what I think should be done with it. And we created a system which allowed a viewer by color intensity on the page to see where people were hotly debating and where comments had not yet been filed on the document, to guide public discussion without controlling it. We created public committees for the discussion of the draft in which individual hackers from around the world were accorded the same procedural rights as the IBM Corporation, the Hewlett-Packard Corporation, and so on. We presented a democratic face for the revision of our copyright law. That is to say, the copyright law concerning software around the world which had enabled the production of the software that had competed so successfully against proprietary software made elsewhere. All of this, I wish to emphasize, is very primitive. GPL, even now, is essentially an early example of how the socialization of technological development through sharing can produce inherently superior technology. It's a working demonstration. We know our data are in. We made the world software industry change. We created heaps of innovation, and we destroyed heaps of burden for parties locked into software sold to them by vendors who would not allow them to understand it or change it. We now live in a world in which the software industry is reconcentrating inside mobile computing devices. The idea that you can be sold a computing device which you can't understand, can't study, can't change, can't fix, and therefore can't prevent from spying on you, is the advent of the industry the GPL and other FOSS institutions were designed to prevent. Recent events in the world have reminded everybody why computers you can't trust aren't safe to use, and have underlined the importance of technology individual users can understand and modify in preventing outright political oppression. We began our activities in changing the law applicable to software with a political purpose in mind. The purpose was to support freedom. Our belief was, and remains, that only a form of knowledge sharing which permits everyone to learn is safe for political liberty as well as economic innovation. We don't consider this to be our invention. We consider this to be Galileo's invention. We consider the right to tell the truth and to share scientific knowledge without permission and without control by law to be one of the greatest achievements of European civilization. We regard what we do as in the main line of the activity of the people of liberty who brought a new Europe into being in 1789. We consider ourselves to be acting on behalf of the very idea of shared knowledge and common self-improvement, which is the achievement of European science. We reject wholeheartedly that this is either some danger or something to be careful about. Every government on earth should now be aware that the largest IT firms in the world, including Microsoft, cannot live or operate without free software. Every government on earth is aware that no bank, no telecommunications firm, no energy company can exist or operate without free software. I am disappointed, I must admit, among all the things that make me happy and delighted and honored to be here today, that in 2013 we're still talking about this. We shouldn't be. The data are long since in. The changes in the industry have long since been registered. The effects on, let us say, a small territory of 31 million people in Kerala, in India, which has been using free software for its public administration, which has been teaching it in its schools, and which has been paying close attention to its social meaning for almost a decade now, are fully indicative of the nature of the social benefits to be had by real engagement with the process of free software. We celebrate today Patrice Emmanuel Schmitz's ability to join the formalities of copyright law and the administrative processes of the European Commission into the free software system via the EUPL. I am not sure, as every license maker enjoys his own licenses, that Patrice will necessarily join with me in hoping that the EUPL is not forever necessary. But whatever may be the case about our persisting licensing structures, the documents on which we do business, which are a tiny piece of this story, the larger principle should no longer be in question. Sharing is how knowledge grows. Owning is how knowledge shrinks. The GPL has demonstrated that with respect to computer software, sharing produces technological innovation and social benefit. Ownership does not. The GPL is only one of many ways that people can share software, and I don't propose that it's the best or the necessary one. In my law practice, on behalf of developers of free software at the Software Freedom Law Center, we use GPL with some clients and we avoid GPL with others for practical reasons having to do with the nature of their software and the nature of their intended distributions. Particular licenses are neither panaceas nor plagues. They're simply, like all other legal documents, ways to get through the day. The principle of freedom, the free exchange of technological knowledge, and the rights of users with respect to technology are, however, not trivialities. They are the central institutions of technology that serves human purposes in the 21st century. And I will close only with one more statement. Technology which doesn't serve human purposes in the 21st century serves inhuman purposes. Thank you very much.